Today we're looking at the best modern Magic the Gathering cards from Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth. First, some honorable mentions. Frodo Sauron's Bane. I can't help but wonder if the ring tempts you mechanic might currently be a bit underrated for Modern. Players seem to be writing it off as a casual commander focused mechanic, but since another casual commander mechanic, Initiative, ended up breaking Legacy, a format way more powerful than Modern, it seems foolish to just write off the mechanic without even testing it. If the ring tempts you ends up being better than players expect, it's possible that the plan of leveling up Frodo and using it to one-shot your opponent might be a little bit more realistic than you think. Delighted Halfling. Delighted Halfling is a powerful mana dork, not just fixing your mana for legends, but making them uncounterable Cavern of Souls style. The only problem is there isn't currently a modern deck built heavily around legends, so the card might not have a current home, but keep an eye on this one because it seems like the kind of card that should be very good in Modern eventually. The One Ring. You can't have a list of Lord of the Rings cards without talking about the ring itself, and while it's possible it just ends up a one-of in the sideboard for Karn the Great Creator, who apparently is very tempted by the ring to tutor up, that's still enough to bring it in as an honorable mention on our list. Arwen Mortal Queen. At first glance, a 3-mana 2/2 indestructible just isn't that exciting for Modern thanks to the plethora of exile-based removal in the format, but Arwen's ability to move around counters and protect your team and even give creatures lifelink seems built for the Heliod Walking Ballista combo deck, so while Arwen probably won't see play in many places, the fact that it's just 3 mana so you can find it with Collected Company likely gives it a home in that build at least. Spiteful Banditry. Spiteful Banditry's ability to wrap the board and leave behind some treasures seems perfect for Indomitable Creativity decks, where you can use it to wipe out your opponent's team and then eventually turn the treasures it creates into Archon of Cruelty with the namesake sorcery Indomitable Creativity. Number 10. Birthday Escape. Birthday Escape is just the most efficient way to be tempted by the ring in all of Magic. For just 1 mana, the sorcery will draw you a card and let you be tempted by the ring. This gives it some interesting implications with low-powered creatures with attack or deals combat damage triggers, since the first level of the ring makes it so your ring bearer can't be blocked by creatures with greater power, making it hard for your opponent to kill your ring bearer in combat. Dreadhorde Arcanist is a good example. If you make the 1/3 your ring bearer with Birthday Escape, your opponent will only be able to block it with 1 power creatures, which means much of the time it'll be unblockable, and even if your opponent has a 1 power creature, it won't be able to kill your Arcanist in combat, making it an easy way to snowball Dreadhorde Arcanist's powerful attack trigger, letting you cast a free spell from your graveyard each turn into a victory. Want to go on your own Birthday Escape? Well, you can grab a copy from our sponsor Card Kingdom over at cardkingdom.com/MTGGoldfish. Number 9. Boromir, Warden of the Tower. Boromir is an interesting modern option thanks to its combination of creature types and abilities. While soldiers haven't really taken off in Modern, at least yet, humans are quite popular, and a 3-drop that can sacrifice itself to save your entire team from a wrath and also shut down free spells like Living End, Crashing Footfall, Solitude, Fury, and Force of Negation, along with literally the entire Cascade mechanic, actually seems pretty powerful. Right now, human decks often use Lavinia Azorius Renegade in the sideboard, which has a similar ability to hate on free spells, but paying 1 extra mana for the ability to fizzle wraths and get a bigger creature overall might actually be worthwhile. Number 8. Mina Tirith. Well, all 5 of the legendary lands from Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth are solid, except for maybe the blue one. The most exciting of the bunch is Mina Tirith. 2 mana and tapping the land itself is a solid rate to draw a card, and white decks tend to be aggressive enough and full of cheap creatures, which means attacking with 2 or more creatures regularly seems pretty easy. More importantly, several of the most popular cheap white threats in all of Modern, like Thalia Guardian of Thraben and Adeline, are legendary, which helps get around the drawback of the land coming into play tapped if you don't control a legendary creature. Number 7. Moria Marauder. Goblins are a fairly solid modern tribe. In fact, there's two different builds of goblins that are popular in the format, and Moria Marauder seems like a great option to generate card advantage in both of them, since it plays well with Goblins Go Wide theme. Cards like Gleeful Demolition and Kadolth Rebirth allow 8-whack goblins to flood the board with 1/1 tokens early in the game, turning Moria Marauder into an absurd source of card advantage because it triggers whenever any goblin deals combat damage, not just when it deals combat damage itself. Meanwhile, combo goblins often play as many as 8 goblin tutors in Bogart Harbinger and Goblin Matron, making it easy to play Moria Marauder as a one-of and still find it consistently when the situation is right. Number 6, Stern Scolding. While countering a creature with power or toughness 2 or less might seem narrow at first glance, when you look at the most popular creatures in Modern, you'll see that Stern Scolding actually counters most of them for just a single mana. In many cases, this will kinda play like the blue Fatal Push with a bit of a timing restriction by keeping things like Ragavan, Esper Sentinel, and Dragon Rage Channeler from hitting the battlefield. Although if your opponent has a creature with an enters the battlefield trigger like Stoneforge Mystic, Solitude, or Grief, you'll be thankful you have Stern Scolding to deal with it on the stack before it gets a chance to enter play. Number 5, Rosie Cotton of South-Lane. Rosie Cotton might not look all that exciting as a random uncommon legend, but once it hits the battlefield alongside a Scurry Oak, you'll be eating your way to an infinitely large board of 1/1 squirrel tokens. The idea is to use Rosie Cotton's ability to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature whenever a token enters the battlefield under your control, to add a +1/+1 counter to Scurry Oak, which will trigger its ability to create a 1/1 squirrel token when it gets a +1/+1 counter. The squirrel token will trigger Rosie, which will then trigger Scurry Oak again, and this will keep happening forever, or at least until you have a few million squirrel friends and decide to stop the loop by putting Rosie's counter on one of them instead of on Scurry Oak. While it is true that a similar combo featuring Ivy Lane Denizen in place of Rosie has existed on the fringes of Modern for a while now, Rosie is a massive upgrade. Since it's just 3 mana, it can be found by Collected Company, unlike the 4 mana Ivy Lane Denizen, which should make the combo way more consistent. With the best draws, you can be making infinite squirrels as early as turn 2, although turn 3 or maybe turn 4 is more likely. Number 4, Flowering of the White Tree. Flowering of the White Tree is likely the most powerful anthem that has ever been printed. On its floor, it gives all your creatures +1/+1 for 2 mana, but the big deal here is it gives all of your legendary creatures +2/+1 in Ward 1, which is an absurd deal for just 2 mana. We already mentioned a moment ago that many white decks are already playing several legends like Thalia and Adeline, and they could easily add more to harness the power of Flowering of the White Tree if they wanted to. Meanwhile, Ragavan Nimble Pilfer is already the most played and one of the strongest creatures in the format, and it becomes even scarier when it's a 4/2 Ward 1 creature attacking on turn 2 thanks to Tree. Plus, we've recently gotten a ton of support for Legendary Matters decks over the past few sets, including the Lord of the Rings set itself, which could be harnessed to make a powerful new aggro deck in Modern, built around cheap legendary creatures, Flowering of the White Tree, and Mox Amber for fast mana. Number 3, Fortunew. At a glance, Fortunew looks like a card built to go into the Hammer Time deck, which looks to cheat on Colossus Hammer's massive equip cost and get it equipped to a creature early in the game, maybe as early as turn 2. Well, Fortunew isn't as efficient at cheating equipment onto creatures as some other options like Sigarda's Aid. It does have a bunch of upsides, like being able to reanimate a Colossus Hammer that is countered or killed, and being able to let you equip it instant speed during your turn, which lets you swing with a bunch of creatures and then move your Colossus Hammer for free onto whatever one goes unblocked to hopefully kill your opponent on the spot with one massive attack. While potentially being good in Hammer Time is nice, Fortunew might also create a brand new archetype in Modern, an Equipment Reanimator. Goblin Engineer offers the perfect way to tutor powerful equipment like Cauldron Complete or Argentum Armor into the graveyard on turn 2, which Fortunew can reanimate on turn 3. Attacking with a 7/8 Goblin Engineer wearing an Argentum Armor and blowing up an opponent's land on turn 3 sounds hilarious, and it might even be an effective way to win some games. Number 2, Samwise Gamg. A minute ago, we talked about Rosie Cotton's combo potential in Modern. Well, Samwise has even more of it, since it supports not just one, but 2 combos. The first is Lannis's Token Factory, which uses Academy Manufacturer to generate an absurd number of food, clue, and treasure tokens as creatures enter the battlefield, which let the deck combo off and play through its entire deck and win the game eventually. Samwise Gamg is perfect for the combo as a backup version of Lannis that can also sacrifice some food to get back an Academy Manufacturer or another combo piece that the opponent manages to kill. While making a massive pile of tokens is fun, combo number 2 might be even more competitive. The idea is to combine Samwise with Cauldron Familiar and a sacrifice outlet like Viscera. With this setup, you can play the cat, drain your opponent for life, and make a food token with Sam's trigger, and then you can sacrifice the cat to Viscera, and then we can sacrifice the food to return the Cauldron Familiar from our graveyard to the battlefield, which will drain our opponent again, and also make another food with Sam, so we can start the loop over. Basically, Samwise plus Cauldron Familiar and a sack outlet offers infinite damage and infinite life gain, which seems pretty appealing in Modern. Number 1, Orcish Bowmasters. Well, perhaps even better in Legacy thanks to the existence of Brainstorm. Orcish Bowmasters is the number 1 Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth card for Modern as well. By itself, it makes 2 1/1 bodies and deals a damage to any target when it enters the battlefield, making the 2-drop a great way to snipe Ragavans, Esper Sentinels, most Mana Dorks, and any other 1 toughness creatures that show up on your opponent's side of the battlefield. But it gets even better. Since Orcish Bowmasters triggers whenever an opponent draws a card, except for the one they draw during their draw step, you can flash it in response to a Mishra's Bauble activation, a Jace the Mind Sculptor Brainstorm, a Fable of the Mirrorbreaker Rummaging, to make an even bigger army and deal even more damage. If you want to go deeper, it interacts really well with cards that force your opponents to draw cards, like Burning Inquiry or various wheel effects, which could mean that Bowmasters is not just a hate card to stop some of the best threats in Modern, but it might also be a build around that creates brand new archetypes in Modern, which is what brings it in at the top of our list. Looking for even more magic? Well, make sure to check out the video about the worst cards to have ever been banned in Magic the Gathering, or maybe the one about the plays that were so ridiculous they actually forced Wizards to change the very rules of the game.